Paul here from My Perfect Failure, helping you turn your failures into successes and your setbacks into opportunity. So, have you ever felt stuck in your career, wondering if there's something more? What if the only thing holding you back is your fear of failure? So, join us as Dr. Baker Schena shares her powerful journey to mastering her career, teaching us how to embrace our strengths, silence the doubters, and live more intentionally. So stay tuned to discover the emotional shift that could change everything for you also.
Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, I am super excited because I have another amazing guest for you today, a returning guest actually. So this is a returning guest, but we talk periodically anyway, but this is the second actual recording that we're actually putting out to the world. So my guest today is the CEO and founder of Baker Schena Communications. She is a leadership coach and professional speaker who works with C-suite executives, academics, academic institutions, entrepreneurs, small businesses, and large corporations to strengthen their management and team building skills. She brings to her clients 35 years as a healthcare public relations and marketing consultant and 25 years as a tenured university professor teaching public relations and journalism. She's received her bachelor's degree and MBA from California State University, Northridge, and her doctorate in organizational leadership from the University of La Verne in Southern California. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Dr. Laurie Baker Schena. How are you?
It's so great to see you, Paul, again. Thank you so much for having me on. I so appreciate you.
I appreciate you. And yeah, whenever we talk, probably we should hit the record button anyway, but at least we're officially doing it for the second time today. So can I just read something else? So as I was researching this, I came across something and I loved it. And I just thought, actually, I want to read this and then I want to get your thoughts on it.
All right.
So this is you. So I've got this from your website, but I just love the narrative. So my professional career reflects a journey, not a destination. I have continually reinvented myself based on three factors: my passions, my ability to positively impact others, my commitment to find joy every day. When I read that, I was just like, wow, I just had to read and read over again because it's such a lovely way to live, to navigate a career where, to my mind, I just thought that yin and yang between your career and personal life and fulfillment.
I got to say, that is really, it's kind of like my North Star. I think everyone needs to have a North Star of intentionally how they want to lead their lives. And so for me, it's kind of a three-pronged approach. One is my strengths. What are my strengths? Because if we can figure out our strengths, we'll really be happier in a career that digs into those strengths. And it's fine to be doing something and learning things, but ultimately, like for example, math is not my strength, MBA aside. So I know that I would not be happy in a job that counts on my math, but I love to write and I love to speak and I'm good at that. So that's that. Then you got to have a passion. Why are you here? Why are we here? And how can we contribute to the good of the world? I mean, and everything that we do, how can we make things better? So having that in mind, along with my strengths, and then how do we find joy every day? How do we find happiness? What does that look like? So that kind of recipe, when we do that as intentionally in a career, I think that's where you can really find fulfillment and, Paul, make an impact.
Yeah. No, I love that. What intrigues me about that recipe that you've put together, I love the ingredients and I love coming up with, I guess it will look different for different people based on our personality, our strengths, our passions. How did you stumble across that? What was your starting point to think, actually, I need to focus on these points and actually be more intentional? Because the reason I asked the question, because I don't think I am, and I'd like to be more intentional. And yeah, so I'm intrigued by how you got to the point, and I'm sure there's other people that are listening or maybe watching that are thinking about that, they can maybe think about themselves. What am I doing today? Am I actually in a career that leans into my strengths even, or am I in a career that maybe I stumbled into? Does it relate to my passions? If I think about it, for some possibly, yes, wonderful, gets a wonderful tick. For others, actually, no, I moan about this job every day to my spouse, to my work colleagues, to the person that I meet on the tube or whoever. So I'm intrigued how you got to the point, and maybe there might be some little cues there for some of us who may, like me, that potentially need and want to get there.
Well, that's a great question. And looking back on my career, it's interesting. In my 20s, I did a lot of self-reflection. And because I was miserable, I went from job to job in my 20s. I don't know what your 20s were like, Paul, but I was feeling my oats, feeding around, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, I realized that, interestingly, in my 20s, I went from job to job. And I think of many of us, Paul, are trying to find ourselves after university. What do we
Absolutely.
want to do? And I realized I had 4 different jobs, all in journalism. Then I went into public relations. And I came to the realization when I was 29 that I did not like to be micromanaged. And I really worked hard, but that working hard was never rewarded like it should have been. And all those extra hours, nothing was working. And being micromanaged, I just did not like it. And I knew I was good. And I knew that I had the discipline to really work hard. And that might translate into starting my own business. So when I was 29, I realized that I need to be happy in a job. What does that look like? And to me, it looked like I needed to be my own boss. And so that was my first journey into really, and it took me all my 20s to realize what I didn't want, Paul, to realize what I did want. And I realized, okay, so I'm a great writer and I really understand medicine at that point. So I can become a medical writer. And it also added up to everything else, Paul, because by being a medical writer, I could help others, in their health. So it was a meaningful career. I could touch lives. And I could, raise a family with it. It allowed me independence. And finally, it brought me a lot of joy. But it took me a lot of misery, but it also took me a point of self-reflection. I think we all need to sit and think, what do we need? What is going to make us happy? I don't think we pause enough in our world. I think we get on the grind. I love the way you use the word stumble, because I think many of us stumble through life as opposed to pause and say, wait a minute, should we be doing what we're doing? And I'll have to tell you, you're going to have a lot of detractors sometime. Many people didn't think that I would be able to do this. And they told me I would fail going into my own business because I had a great job at a big university and I had stepped away. But Paul, I doubled my salary the first year out of having my own business.
That's
So
phenomenal.
I went through the fear and I did that. So
Okay.
that is what I think we need to do, is we need to have the courage to stop and analyze and see, are we on the path we need to be?
Okay. So I love everything you just said. I love the fact that, well, I love everything actually. I love the fact that you doubled your salary. That's important and a wonderful thing to do that within a year. What intrigues me about, so I wrote down other people. So I don't need to, I will, that was a question I had and you kind of answered it. But maybe if I can maybe ask a question around that. So whenever we do something which is a little bit different, like you having a job at a big university, and I guess outwardly looking in, everybody that knows you and thinks about the career will think, well, what's Laurie doing? Why would she be leaving this career? And maybe they think, well, there must be something going on there. Did that give you any doubts, or was your self-reflection strong enough that you knew what you needed to do?
A great question. And I think I was so miserable that I had to stop. And I don't want anyone to get to that point. I mean, you get to a point where you just want to be hit by a bus because you don't like your job so much, you know? But, you know, and I still, and I'm a professional speaker now and a motivational speaker. And I always say, you have to say to yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen if I make this career change? So for me, I wanted, what was the worst thing that could happen? I wasn't going to go hungry because, you know, there's safety nets, you know, all over the world for people who are unemployed, right? I wasn't, if I failed, if my business didn't go, I don't think I was going to go hungry. It wasn't going to make me sick. I wouldn't lose the roof over my head. I wouldn't die. So when you look at it that way, what's the worst that could happen to me? I could fail. And if I fail, Paul, I would just go and get another job. So I said to myself, you know what? The worst scenario is not going to kill me. So why don't we continue to move forward? So that's exactly my thought process. And that's what I did. And my gut instinct that if I worked really hard, I was able to, to network and really put myself out there and do the things I needed to do, I could start my own business. And I'll tell you, that business, while it started as a PR business, now it's a leadership business. But I've never wanted for clients because it's just knowing that you are where you're just doing the best and having that confidence in yourself. And that is how you move forward.
Okay. So that's the key point, having confidence in ourselves. And I think the reason I've referenced that is because I'm sure we all know it could be ourselves or the people that we know, it could be family, it could be friends, could be work colleagues. And it kind of visits kind of the theme of what we want to cover, particularly today, is that we can get marooned, we can get stuck because maybe we don't live in confidence, we live in fear, we live in failure, and that paralyzes us and we literally don't move forward. We kind of stay stuck. It's almost like we're in quicksand where we can't lever our bodies out of that. And I love the fact that you leaned into your confidence, and every conversation I have with you, I just feel the energy, I feel the confidence, and yeah, it's almost something you want to bottle because we all need that. What I wanted to ask you was around, so I wrote down before we hit the record, but when I was researching that you've got this lovely blend of being an academic, but also being an entrepreneur. And you mentioned that you never lacked the clients. How did you find the kind of pivot from academia to entrepreneurship? Because you mentioned that you've never lacked the clients. What was that pivot like for you?
Well, interestingly, if the pivot went from entrepreneur to academic, I happened to be working in a university, but not as a professor. But that really had the feel. So, but I think that teaching is a very entrepreneurial thing because you really need to, what is an entrepreneur? Someone who really is self-motivated to build something. And when you're a teacher, you're basically building people and building talent and building and things. So I think that entrepreneurial spirit really seeped into what I wanted to do academically. So it really was a lovely thing because I've been in the university teaching 2 years out of my out of starting so when I think I was 31 or 32, I started teaching in the university part-time. It was a natural extension, I think, of my need to really help others, to share. And again, I found out that I was a good teacher, which I never would have known. I was an emergency hire when I got hired for that university thing, and I just didn't know I could do it. So that all comes together. But again, I think the key point here, Paul, is having the confidence to try something. And sometimes that means not listening to what I call the haters, not listening to the detractors of your life, and instead really focusing on you and what really your strengths are. What do you bring to and when you can shut out that noise, surround yourself with people who can be objectively supporting you, who can say, I think that's a great idea or that's not, but who really care for you and get that input. I think that's incredibly helpful to move forward. But I have found that you have to shut out those outs. You cannot worry about what people think of you. You have to really follow your heart. And that's not an easy thing to do. But Paul, as you get older, you start realizing that other people's opinions mean less and less, and how you feel about yourself and laying that foundation means more and more.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. And I think that, and I'm sure everybody that listens to this can think about living in lack, where we maybe we get far too preoccupied with what other people think about our decisions, or maybe even they think even before we get to the point that we've made the decision, maybe we don't make the decision because we've already made up our minds what other people are going to think about the decision that we've been pouring over in our minds for maybe months, could be years. And we never get to make that decision because we, to your point, that we don't have the confidence in ourselves. And so there's something that I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier, and you talk about life is short and dreams are big. So I wrote that down because I thought it was just a really lovely, I guess, phrase or quote for us all to lean into our dreams and make those big decisions and don't get, I guess, paralyzed by our dreams.
Right. And we should have dreams. I mean, that's first of all. But I think even most importantly, Paul, is we have to realize we only have one shot here. And one of my favorite things I always said was life is not a dress rehearsal. You are on stage right now. So waiting for the right time, not being afraid to take the risks. As an older person, you don't want to look back. You're better off looking back and saying, I tried something and it didn't work. Never trying it all, because that mystery will eat at you. So that's why I used to encourage my students who just graduated, with the college degree, if you want to become an actor, or if you want to do something off the charts or a dancer, do it. If you have to work at a coffee store, or a second job to fulfill that, but give it a shot, because your youth is your youth. And once you're in your 40s and 50s, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame. But in your 20s, give it a shot. What's the worst that can happen? You're not going to starve, hopefully. I mean, you'll get that second job, but at least you can say 30 years later, I gave it a shot and it didn't work, but I really gave it my all.
Yeah.
Versus I never tried, and now look at me. And it's so crucial to tell our young people that they really, really, really need to explore and figure that out. And again, have that confidence. And Paul, I'm going to jump right into this. I think the reason why more of us don't do that is because we have a society, and this is why I love your podcast so much, because we have a society that says you cannot fail. You cannot fail. Failure is the worst thing that can happen. And there's a shame put on failure. Yet failure is our greatest teacher. Failure is how we move forward. Failure is how we learn, if we learn our lessons. So I think people's fear of failure prevents them from doing great things, because, they just can't, don't do that. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that, so there's a couple of things that you said which definitely resonated with me. Obviously, the failure piece, I think we know that failure has a stigma. It's we don't try because of the fear of failure. And interestingly, I think that when we fail, we get these learnings and we get these ideas that actually reveal something about ourselves or about something that we thought we wanted to do, that it could be something else. We just get these ideas, we get these crumbs, which are ideas which we wouldn't have got before. And if we look at sometimes I don't like to focus too much on the noted people because they're just the noted people who've done wonderful things like Steve Jobs and Thomas Edison and all these wonderful people that have done fabulous things. Because there's so many people that we don't know of who are doing wonderful things, who have done wonderful things. But these people, I think, lean into what you talk about. They've got no stigma around failure. They just go out and do it because they understand that the experimentation, the learning is pivotal to what they want to do. They don't put a flag in the ground and say fail or success. They realize that they are part of the same, that they form the same, I guess that they're part of the same ecosystem, that they complement one another.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love the word you, Paul, that word stigma is such an important word because we have such a stigma on failure. And, we particularly see this, and I hate to say it, but the generation of parents raising their kids afraid for them to fall, afraid for them to fail. We're not doing our kids any, service by not allowing them to fail, because the most important thing that we can do as people and human beings is to learn how to get up and learn how to move forward after we fail. And if we don't equip our young people to get resilient and have a failure and then learn how to get beyond it, that is the greatest gift we can give our kids. And I am not, in many instances, I'm not seeing that happening with parents today. They're just so afraid something's going to happen and they're overprotecting, they're helicoptering, and you're really doing a disservice to your children. So to me, I think we need to really celebrate failure as long as we learn from it, and then use it as, it's not going to be the end of the world, and helping us propel us into greater things.
Yeah, no, totally. That's really inspiring listening to you, the way that you phrase that and you bring that together. Because I was listening to a podcast, Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, who's got a wonderful podcast, and I follow him on LinkedIn. To be honest, I was aware of this because I'd listened to an episode. But what he's done is he's hired the key hire for his business, a director of experimentation. So he wants to experiment. He knows he's going to fail, but he knows it's going to make them more agile. They're going to uncover things that they would never uncover if they weren't prepared for things not to work. So, and he feels that it's a pivotal part of this particular business that I think he launched maybe this year or the back end of last year. And I was just like, this is what we want. And I think about, as you were talking, I was thinking about particularly younger people who are starting out, I guess, college, university, when they're going to hit those 20s, about having that ability to not to we use the word stigma, to actually not really buy into the stigma, to have that independence where they're happy maybe to be more intentional about how they want to pursue their life and their career.
It's true. In your 20s, I believe it should be a decade of experimentation. I mean, really, you're young, you're finding yourself. And, I always thought that after you got to university and you learn something, then you're going to stick with that the rest of your life. And you learn quickly that is not necessarily the case, nor should it be the case. But I love that business who celebrates experimentation. I call it strategic risk. You experiment with strategies and planning in mind. While it's experimenting, it's also planned experimentation.
Yeah.
And that again, and I think it all comes back, and this is my new word, Paul, is intentionality. How are we living our lives with intent so that we can really make it what we want and be who we want. And what does that look like? And we can't do that unless we really take that moment to pause and reflect, either alone or with people who love us, support us, and know us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think that intentionality where we pause, because life, it's so a million miles per hour. Everybody busy. I'm sure I read something or heard this. Sometimes busyness can be laziness at the same time, because sometimes we can just be too busy doing things. Well, Paul, what are you busy doing? What are you doing today? Are you just busy doing lots of random things that amount to nothing? Which actually that's lazy, because you haven't put any, I'm going to rob your word, intentionality around what's important to you. What are your passions? So busyness can be an excuse for nothingness.
That is such a great observation. And busyness doesn't mean effort. It really does take effort to be intentional, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you used the word earlier, and I'm not sure, I'd maybe get your thoughts on this because I could be out of sync with it. But you talked about discipline earlier. And for people that are listening, that are thinking, I definitely want to reflect. I definitely want to be more intentional. Do they need to make it a practice so it becomes discipline, and then all of a sudden it becomes a habit? What's a good way for people maybe to start their baby steps of becoming more intentional?
Well, I think it starts in your daily work. Like, I think before you get to work in the day, you spend 10 minutes and think about what your day looks like and how you are going to maximize that day, what you want to get done and how you're going to do that. And then so that you just take that time and also what are so that's kind of like a daily practice. And then at the end of the day, how did you do? And I'm a big one on reflecting on your day. What went right and what went wrong? And then reflecting on what could I have done? What could I control? What couldn't I control? So that's starting to daily, instead of just like going to work and coming home, reflecting on, are you spending your time well? What's working, what's not? What do I like about my job? What don't I like about my job? What can I control and what can't I control? So taking the time, and that's what we just don't do. You're so right. We don't take time to think about these things. And then, when you have a quiet evening, really do some research, figure out what can I do that would really not only use my strengths, but really satisfy me in terms of career. So again, it's a discipline of taking that pause. That
Yeah,
is it all.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm taking notes. So whenever I talk to you, I'm always taking notes. What I want to ask you. So so we've exchanged a few emails back and forth in our preparation for this discussion, and we've covered this a little bit, but I definitely want to sort of pick into this a little bit more, where we talk about people that are in careers or might be a project, and we get stuck in a career or a project, and we just don't know how to extract ourselves from that situation because of maybe there's fear of failure, and we can get stuck. So I know that you work with leaders all across the world that are looking to lead themselves, lead their teams, and maybe they can get stuck in these situations as well. Do you have any? I know we've covered it a bit, but I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on why this happens and why we find it so difficult when we are stuck in a career, when we are stuck on a project, that we just struggle to move beyond that, and we can find ourselves in that same cycle for 10 years or maybe more.
It's interesting. It's a great question, Paul. And I think people get stuck. And I think it's multifactorial why we get stuck. But one of the main reasons is that we're afraid. Many of us are afraid of change. They'd rather be miserable in their job than find another place that they could find happiness, but they're intimate with their current misery. So there's a fear of change, a fear of failure, And a fear of not knowing how to do something, or even a fear of not even being able to start. So you're sitting here, you're stuck in a project, and I got to tell you something, being stuck leads to procrastination. And so it's like a vicious cycle of being stuck and then procrastinating because you don't know where to go. And then also, let's face it, we have to talk about our mental health too. When you get depressed because you are miserable in your job, you feel stuck. And when you're depressed, it's very difficult to say, oh, I'm going to change my life today. I'm going to go find another job or make my current job better. You can't do that because you're so depressed. So there's a real cycle that's real in all of us. And it also happens to relationships too. You're stuck in a relationship that really isn't good for you, but you're too depressed or tired or fearful to try to change it. And for me, I want to challenge our listeners and viewers that we need to really rise above all of those obstacles, the fear, the fear, the procrastination, and really say, I am worth living a very fulfilling life. And if I have to do this and this and these steps to do it, this is what I'm going to do. And so I think that it all goes down to that, really facing that fear and moving beyond it. And so, we can get into this later, but, I have some strategies for that. But the most important thing we have to, first of all, write down is, what are we afraid of? Because you write that stuff down and then you really see, is that a realistic failure, or is that something that I've made up in my head? And so that's interesting too. For example, I don't think I could ever be a professional singer. I cannot sing. So my fear of failure is very real because I probably would. However, those of us who have that talent to sing, I have people who can sing and who can act, and they're afraid to do anything because there's so much competition. Well, why not you? Why couldn't you rise above that? But having that fear of competition ingrained in you, that makes you stuck, so you don't even try, which gets us right back to the regrets you're going to have because you didn't try. So it's all, this conversation's all kind of interwoven into the same idea that fear makes us not want to try, which keeps us stuck. And then 20 years later, we wake up and we realize we should have tried. It's fascinating, which is why this is such an important topic and one to really take seriously as we move our lives forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, the opportunity that we all have, the control that we all have, but some way or somewhere along the way we kind of give that away, and then we don't know how to pull it back. So we lose access to, we still have access, but we lose, maybe we use this word a lot, the confidence to maybe tackle things, and then the doubt sets in. And then our brains and our minds are incredibly powerful because we repeat negative, I guess, thoughts about our ability. And then we lean into, so I've loved some of the things that you've said today, that what's the worst thing can happen? Because we always think about the worst. We never think, actually, well, if it doesn't work, and I realize that maybe singing isn't for me, or I might feel, actually, there might be a certain type of singing or a certain type of audience that really likes my singing.
Great point.
So it's very interesting, this subject, and I think it's important that we get to a place where we kind of seize control.
And we intentionally seize control, because which goes right into what I call the solution shift. And the solution shift is something that I've kind of developed over the past decade. And instead of living in the problem, we live in the solution. We know people who just drone on and on about how miserable their lives are, whether it is, their personal life, their professional life, and you go out and have a drink with them or something, and all they do is complain. And that is draining. But not only is that draining, that person, it never moves that person forward, because they're sitting and they're stewing in that problem. So I propose in my solution shift that instead of living in the problem, you live in the solution. Instead of putting all your energy into what's wrong, you put your energy in figuring out, how am I going to fix that? How am I going to address that? And once your brain starts thinking about how the solution to the problem versus just focusing on the problem itself, you will see what a difference it makes in terms of how you feel away the world, and how it shifts your consciousness to a joyful one, because what I call, you're living in the solution. And so that solution shift, instead of, I mean, you can talk about the problem and look at it, but don't stay in the problem too long. Instead, use all of your experience, your friends, all that, to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, no, I love that.
And that is, so I live in the solution no matter what hits and whatever. And believe me, Paul, as you know, life is very difficult, and we are hit with problems every day. Just everyday survival for many of us is very difficult. But instead of dwelling on that, how do we make that better? What steps can we do? So that's my solution shift. And that whole process really shifts your thinking and makes you more positive and very forward thinking.
Yeah, yeah. I love that idea as well. It's genius because the mind tricks us to lean into negative. But if you use this solution shift, it's almost, I got ya, I got ya. I'm focusing on the solution, because I think inherently, I don't know, I'm like this as well. You might think about doing something, and I'm pretty much echoing what you've said, that you kind of lean into, that's going to be difficult, and what if it doesn't work? And you come up with any number of obstacles that are really unhelpful, that kind of it can do one of two things. Either they stops you totally in your tracks, so you don't pursue it, or, to your point, we procrastinate, and a decision that I could make today, it could take years. So this podcast, as an example, I stewed over this for like probably 15 months before I hit the go button. If I'd have known Laurie, if I'd have known you, and we could have had that conversation 15 months prior to actually hitting the go button, I'd have pressed the go button 15 months before. So I totally do get that. And I love that idea, because I think it's a lovely cue or tool that everybody who's listening can use that.
Paul, what were your fears in those 15 months? What was holding you back? Do you remember? Because now your podcast is so successful and so relevant, but what was going on for those 15 months that held you back? I mean, it's a great example.
So the fears that I had, so I had a lot, really. I had fears that I wasn't a podcaster, and I compared myself to other people. So I compared myself to podcasters who are out there that I'd listened to, that were doing a wonderful job, and they got a big following, and to my mind, they were successful. So I compared myself to them, which was wrong. I had fears around the idea of, I didn't have the expertise. I felt that I had to be an expert from day one to talk about, or to put something out into the ether that had my kind of name on it. So that was certainly something that held me back. I just had fear of doing something that I hadn't done before. So I wasn't a podcaster. What gave me the right to do these things? So I had I put all these obstacles in the way that prevented me from hitting the go button. And it was the reason that I hit the go button was because what I did, because my thoughts about doing this had gone on for about 15 months, I kind of sought out, say, probably about 3 people, my brother and somebody that I work with, Dan, and there was somebody else, possibly Sonia, possibly Sonia, the third person. So I sought 3 people out who I knew that would I knew that they would, I trust these people, that they're highly intelligent, and they're very honest with me as well. Honesty was important, and I knew they wouldn't judge me for doing what I wanted to do or what I was thinking about doing. And they were just great in terms of the feedback they gave me. And at that point, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go for the chat. I'm going to go through the process. and it was one step at a time. I didn't, it was one step at a time, name, website, and then reaching out to people. So then I, hit the go button.
But it's so interesting. I mean, your process, that whole imposter syndrome, it's crippling, and it's universal. So which is why this is such an important topic, is how many of us have not, always felt, am I the person? But your story is also one that vividly demonstrates you cannot compare yourself to others when you start out something new. You really have to realize it's your own journey. There's only one Paul Padmore in the world, and that's a beautiful thing. It's your journey, and it is a journey. As I say, it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah, I love that.
And so you cannot compare yourself to anybody because there's only one Paul. And so if we take that block away, we take that obstacle away, and we say, you know what, we're just going to work on us and not worry about other people in the world. That really is such a key thing to be able to overcome. And now I'm sure there are people out there thinking, gosh, I'm not as good as Paul. I shouldn't be doing this. So it's so funny how that goes full circle.
Yeah. And I think when we lean into ourselves, that's our uniqueness. That's why people are going to really love us. I think they're going to feel our authenticity, because I could not be I could not be a Tim Ferriss number two, because
Right.
I'm not going to do that. If I try to copy what he excels at, it would just go down like a lead balloon. People would feel, I don't quite get it. I'm not sure that he's quite, that's, even if they don't know me, they don't have to know me to know that it doesn't come across authentic, organic. So, and I'm still going through the process, because I know that I've been doing this 5 years, but I still feel like a 5-year-old doing this in some respects, which is not a bad thing, because it means that I've got the opportunity to grow and develop this. It's like, to your analogy, it's a journey, not a destination. Actually, I like that, because it means that I've got all this room for growth, development, learning, perfecting, becoming better. So when you and I do our next episode in 12 months time, or 2 years, or whatever, hopefully there's going to be some development where you'll say to me, Paul, look at the growth from 2024 to 2025 to 2026. And that, to me, is an opportunity.
We need to continue growing. I mean, that's what's going to keep us interesting. But that was such a great point about, you do not want to be someone's clone. You need, it's brilliant. And so and we can use people for inspiration, but we shouldn't want to copy anybody. And that is just such a key thought, because that would not only, it just doesn't make any sense. We have to find our individuality. There's only one of us, and we have to really lean into that. And once we have the courage to do that, life becomes fascinating, very fulfilling, and you can find a lot of joy there. As opposed to trying to please everyone all the time and trying to be someone you're not. You won't find joy there, and Paul, you'll get stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you get stuck, and also, I think when we try and be somebody else, I don't think we can ever be truly happy, because I think that it becomes taxing trying to replicate somebody else. But I think when we find ourselves and then we deliver ourselves, I think there's more of an energy, there's more of a flow about us, and I think that radiates to anybody that we're engaging with.
Absolutely.
So, I'm conscious of time. So, a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So whenever I speak to you, you're flying here, you're flying there. You're supporting these groups on leadership development, and you're doing your public speaking. So I was keen to ask you a little bit about that for people that are saying, Paul, please ask Laurie about her leadership training, what that involves, and how maybe people can find you and reach out to you.
Well, it's twofold. Once I enjoy giving motivational talks to groups, trade associations are great, and also to companies. And I do a lot of work with companies, because it's interesting, Paul, we are never taught to be leaders. There's no training course, not even, I don't think, in college, that that helps you be a leader. So many times managers are promoted to manager based on how well they do a job, not how well they lead a team. So you see these people who are promoted to these positions suddenly have people under them and people over them, called leading up and leading down, and they fail tremendously because they're not given the tools on how to lead a team, how to do conflict management, how to motivate your staff, how to give reviews, how to do all the things that leaders do. They're just put in these positions. So what I do is I go in and I help people, a staff from the C-suite down to everybody, try how to be your best self and how to lead, how to work together, and how to move a company forward. So it's one-on-one coaching, it's trainings, on how to be great at customer service, how to be great communicators with each other and your clients, all these things, how to deal with conflict management, these things that just are not necessarily innate to us. So that's where I help companies. And once you've got a happy workforce that's engaged, then you're going to see your profits go up because everybody is truly, together and wanting to have that same purpose. So that's what I do. And I find such joy. I've worked with several companies for long periods of time who've really become incredibly profitable because they've invested in their employees and themselves and have helped raise morale, find joy, find purpose. And that translates not only into a happier workforce, but more money, very productive and very profitable.
Nice, wonderful. And I think, I know that because I've worked in companies where the leadership is lacking and the ship becomes rudderless. So when you've got, I guess, colleagues or leaders within the team, but actually, because to your point, it would have happened today. There will be people that are promoted that have been given a leadership responsibility, aren't given the training, and not their fault, but it's going to be a struggle for them. So someone like working with somebody like you that can give them the tools, give them the confidence so they can lead. They know what leadership is, and also they can lead as themselves impactfully, and they can really help whoever they reports into them become effective leaders also.
So that's
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so a question around that. So if there's people that want to reach out to you even, they can do that online. So
yes, they can find me on LinkedIn, which is a really great place. Lori Baker Schena. Google me. And not too many people like me. And also my website is loribakerschena.com. So shoot me a note and we'll see how we can work together. And I also do, individual coaching, helping you be a better leader, helping you find yourself, helping you change careers, all these things that are positive and help people move forward. That's what I do.
Wonderful. Okay, lovely. So get the links, put them on the show notes. And so now I want to ask you the recurring question.
Okay.
So the recurring question is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, they can be alive or past, who would you invite?
I have to tell you, I thank you for giving me the heads up on this. And I was thinking, what inspires me? And interestingly enough, it's music. Music has gotten me through my darkest days as a teenager to my joy and everything that I live. And I as you know, Paul, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor, and a lot of the things getting through that is music. So it'd have to be 3 musicians, and one of them is David Bowie, who I have loved forever. And when he was one of the few people, when he died, I cried. And again, I'm a child of the 70s, so that's really phenomenal. The second person would be Matt Berninger, and he is the lead singer of The National, which is an alternative band, which is fantastic. I've been listening to since 1999.
I know them, need to look them up.
The National, they're wonderful. So the lead singer there. And finally, Taylor Swift, because she is a force to be reckoned with, very creative, a great businesswoman. And lately, I've just really enjoyed all of her takes on what it is to be happy, angry. She goes through the whole range of emotions that we all need to go through. So those 3 musicians sitting around a table would be an absolute joy for me.
Yeah, that would be amazing to think about. You would have to be fascinating. I think that you would talk about things that you wouldn't even think that you would talk about. I think there would be subjects that would come up that the next day you would say, wow, I didn't know they were interested in this. I can't believe that we spoke about this. Yeah, I just think that would be fascinating.
And again, I celebrate the talent out there that uplift all of our lives. They play such a key role in keeping us moving forward. They also give us consistency. I've been listening to the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones since the 60s. I mean, there's a consistency there that really helps you through all challenges of your life, that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm conscious of time. I said that twice. So one last question, if I can sneak in. So for anybody that is listening now that maybe is stuck on a project, on a career, do you have maybe one piece of advice or I guess a passing comment for them?
Absolutely. You have to remember, this is the key, to realize what you can control and what you can't, and focus your energies on what you can control. Because things that you can't control, if you can figure that out and don't put your energies into them, instead figure out what you can control, which usually it's yourself, as opposed to you can't control the people's opinions, you can't control the economy, you can't control politics. There's so much you can't control over there. So don't worry about it. Worry about you, because that's what you can control. Once you figure that out, it's liberating because you stop wasting your time on things that you cannot control.
Okay. Amazing. Laurie, said amazing. I'm going to say it again. And I'm going to say thank you so much. It's been a beautiful discussion. Learned so much, as I always do when I speak to you. And I'm already looking forward to our next conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And you take good care of yourself.
I will try. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button. I'm always keen to grow the channel, and your feedback is most welcome. So we're keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.